Hey guys, welcome back. This week we're going to talk about vertical takeoff and landing aircraft. They're a staple of the Halo multiplayer experience. They've come in many forms, particularly as Halo's matured as a series, but which is arguably the most realistic? Which is the best? When it comes to VTOL aircraft in Halo, there's kind of three that I consider fundamental. Chronologically speaking, the first one is going to occur in Halo Reach. That's going to be the Falcon. It's crewed by one pilot and can carry up to 5 passengers. It's 38 feet long, 33 feet wide, and 14 feet tall. It weighs a bit over 15 tons, and its armament includes a 20mm autocannon under the nose, and then each side has a door gunner that can use either a 40mm grenade launcher or a 12.7mm gun. It's a 50 cal for those of us who use those. Following that, in Halo 3 we see the Hornet. It's going to maintain using one pilot and a little bit less passengers, only 4. The weird thing though about the Hornet is the passengers are external to the fuselage, rather than being internalized like on a Falcon and many other troop kind of transports. Instead, they're going to be sitting outside on these like skids. The Hornet itself though is a little bit smaller, 31 feet long, 29 feet wide, and 15 feet tall, weighing only 4 tons, so substantially less than a Falcon. Its armament on the other hand is boosted. It has 2 fixed forward 20mm autocannons, as well as missile launchers. There's no stated size, but presumably they're either 70mm or 122mm rockets, very common size. Finally, starting in Halo 5, we have the Wasp, and it's still around here in Halo Infinite. This one's different because it's much smaller. It's single occupant, one pilot, no passengers. It's only 25 feet long, 21 feet wide, and 7 feet tall, but it weighs in at 1.5 tons, which is considerably lighter than many vehicles we have on the road today. For its armament, it has 2 7.62 fixed forward-facing guns, as well as 2 50mm rocket pods. Each of these is VTOL in the sense that, like I said, they can take off and land vertically. Juxtaposed to modern tilt rotor aircraft, they do not seem to have the ability to have their rotors or anything like that go into the forward kind of facing position for cruise. Presumably something like the Falcon could, but we never really see it in practice. Looking at them and taking a more in-depth engineering approach, presumably each engine is connected via a common gear shaft. And the reason why I say that is because it helps survive engine outs. And that's if you lose an engine, either to hostile fire or just shitty circumstances. The way that works is, let's say you're flying a Falcon. You take a round into your left engine and it catches fire and you shut it down. Rather than have thrust only being produced from the right side, rolling the aircraft onto its back and crashing, leading to your demise as the pilot, you have a gear shaft connecting that right side engine to the propeller on the left. You only have half the horsepower, right? Because you're only generating power from one engine, but it gives you the ability to at least descend and either have a controlled landing or continued flight at a lower altitude. So what about the real world? Well, it's actually interesting because we've had some pretty cool developments recently when we talk about tilt rotor and VTOL aircraft. The Bell Lockheed Martin V280 was recently selected by the US Army to replace the Sikorsky UH-60 Blackhawk. And if you look at it, it's going to share a lot of design similarities to the Falcon. Its crew is larger, it has 4 crew, 2 pilots, and 2 gunners. It carries up to 14 passengers. It's larger, 51 feet long, 82 feet wide, 23 feet tall, and it weighs 15 tons, so roughly the same, and that's when it's fully loaded. For engineering numbers, each engine produces 7,000 horsepower, so that's 14,000 overall, cruising at 280 knots, hence the V280 name, which is about 320 miles per hour. Its combat range is 600 to 900 miles when it's outfitted, and if you take off some of those combat and defensive stores and munitions, it can ferry roughly 2,400 miles for a one-leg trip. A little bit larger than that, now you're talking the V-22 family of aircraft. That's the CV and MV-22. Similar cruise size to the V-280, but a little bit larger, about 30% larger and heavier, but that allows it to carry up to 24 passengers, 32 if you really jam them in there. The V-280 makes up in weight savings because it uses a lot more composites than you see in the V-22. Now, if we want to talk about strike assets, in the past you had the Harrier, which is now being replaced by the F-35 Bravo. These use a vertical kind of fan as part of their engine to take off and land in short distances. The Harriers would kind of vector their thrust, where the F-35 Bravo kind of tilts the entire assembly. But unlike what you see in Call of Duty and some other games, these aircraft are not meant to engage the enemy or perform close air support while in a hover. Instead, they're going to be flying like a traditional asset, largely because if you think about it from a common sense perspective, you need the airspeed and maneuverability to avoid being shot down. If you're hovering, you're a lot easier to acquire and engage with any sort of anti-air rifle fire. So rolling that all together, let's take a look at those 3 original Halo aircraft and see which one of them, like how they mesh up and which arguably is the best. I would say to start, each of these are capable and fun to fly in the games. And this is not a knock on them in particular, but the kind of like the lore reasons given for their use, you can definitely see which is like more applicable versus those that maybe need a new role. And to illustrate, we'll start with the Wasp. I would consider the Wasp the least useful of the 3. And that's not because it's a bad aircraft, it's because the explanations given on the encyclopedia, as well as the expanded lore for its use, it just doesn't make sense. What I'm getting at is they say that the Wasp is a lightweight close air support asset, but it's really not. It's not, heavily armed, and it's not very well protected. It is incredibly lightweight, but that weight savings is probably from not having armor. 7.62 millimeter guns, I mean, those are going to tumble after, a few thousand feet. Same with 50 millimeter rockets. And so you're going to have to be up close to your enemy or up close to your target. Otherwise, you're going to have accuracy issues. Not to mention that if things are starting to tumble when we talk about bullets and rockets, they either A, may not arm, or B, the fusing may not go off when it impacts. So now you're talking about UXO, unexploded ordnance. See, all that could be solved if you transition the Wasp from a close air support asset to more of a long-range, low observability scout reconnaissance platform. The fact that it's single occupant and it's lightweight and it's small means that you could maneuver, and especially with an enhanced sensor package, peek around or above buildings or in forests to spot the enemy, especially when we talk about sensor fusion and network links and stuff like that we're starting to see in the modern world. You could push that data back over the horizon to your kind of headquarters and help them build situational awareness. And in this circumstance, you're not exposing the Wasp to, anti-air fire in a circumstance where it wouldn't be very survivable. Instead, you leverage the fact that it's small and lightweight to maneuver and have eyes on the enemy at all times. Now, instead, if you wanted to perform close air support, that's where I say the Hornet comes in. And the Hornet, in my opinion, would be the number 2 best aircraft. The only reason I knock it is the fact that they have provisions for passengers, but they're external to the fuselage. I mean, it is definitely doable to carry people external to your helicopter. It's done in the modern world, but it's really reserved for special operations forces and emergencies. And if that's something you're interested in, I do have videos where I talk about the special operations in Halo, as well as how they made up to the real world. But in terms of the Hornet, it just doesn't, you have a good armament, the 20mm guns and the missiles. I would say instead of having provisions to carry people external, I would take those skids off, make it a little bit more lighter weight, enhance that maneuverability, and now you have a really lethal escort aircraft. And the reason why that's useful is the Hornet's able to prosecute targets, whereas you have something like the Falcon that's going to carry the troops. And that's where, like I said, the number 1 most realistic and capable aircraft in the Halo games is going to be the Falcon. And that's because, like I said, the others aren't necessarily bad. They're not. It's just that the Falcon, its use case in the lore and its appearance in the games meshes up really, really well. It's realistic. It's capable. It carries 5, but realistically, if we're not talking Spartans here, probably get like 10 people in there. So full squad. It is a very good armament. A 20mm nose gun, that's nice. The fact that it has 2 side door gunners, that's very comparable to helicopters we have today. Its weight is similar to a V280, even though it's heavier than the other aircraft, but it's not like unrealistic. It's not like, bloated. It's still smaller and more compact than the stuff that we have today. On top of that, one thing I think many people wouldn't consider is that props hold up a lot better to foreign object debris, FOD, when they hover at a low altitude. Turbofans and stuff like that, if you imagine hovering over like sandy, dirty soils, you start to get these vortices and you can start to ingest a lot of debris. Turbofans are very susceptible to getting damaged and tearing up the blades, where a prop is a little bit more hardy and enduring. But overall though, like I said, each of these aircraft, they serve a unique role, but they kind of overlap with their appearances in the multiplayer, and that's largely because you probably want to balance the multiplayer experience. But if you delineated the kind of mission sets a tad bit in the Halo universe, making the Wasp more of a scout reconnaissance aircraft, the Hornet your dedicated attack and escort VTOL platform, and then the Falcon as a true troop transport, now you can kind of have like a lot more enhanced lethality for the UNSC. Well guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. If this is content you enjoy, kind of applying realism and real world concepts to Halo, please subscribe to the channel. Helps me out a lot, and this is the type of stuff I love to make. I really enjoy hearing you guys' comments, especially because a lot of you out there definitely have some really cool experience, as well as kind of like the things you've worked on. On top of that, I hope everyone has a fantastic holidays and a break, hopefully, in your work and classes. Take care and be safe.